So I've been pretty open about the fact that I grew up very Jewy. I grew up as a Hasidic Jew. I have not been quiet about that. One of the things that I haven't very much talked about was the fact that for a brief time, I was involved in the pickup community. Now, I was pretty hesitant to make this video in the first place for a few reasons, but mainly because worried of judgment. I understand the pickup community is, to say the least, it's a very polarizing community and idea. People usually have very strong feelings about it, and I got enough issues already. You know, I didn't need to air out my personal problems and my personal experiences and let people on the internet argue over whether I suck or not. You know, I already have that with my other videos. I didn't need it with this, but I decided for a few different reasons I wanted to make this video, and I'm going to get into those reasons in a second. I'm also going to get into my personal experience, my personal story, how I got into pickup, and some of the lessons I learned from it. But before we get to that, guys, make sure if you like this video, hit that subscribe button. If you hit that subscribe button in the comments down below, I'll make sure to respond to each and every one of your comments. So I was hesitant, but I mainly decided I wanted to make this video for two reasons. Number one, I've been consistently putting out content on this channel for about a year now, and I've watched a lot of YouTubers. And one of the things that I think a lot of YouTubers who have similar channels to mine like to poke fun of is the pickup community, is pickup artists, which, by the way, I'm not against. You know, there are a lot of silly, ridiculous pickup artists out there that I think deserve to be made fun of. But at the same time, it kind of makes, I kind of cringe just a little bit, because I look at a lot of these YouTubers and the way that they're approaching the pickup community or wanting to talk about it in the first place, I think is without maybe an understanding of why the pickup community exists, why men decide that they want to join the pickup community in the first place. I think there is maybe a lack of empathy or understanding. I think a lot of these YouTubers just think it's silly, it's ridiculous, it's just a bunch of men who just want to get laid all the time and that's it, and who would, like, you'd have to be an idiot to join these groups. It seems like that's somewhat of the perspective that I see a lot of these YouTubers make fun of pickup artists. From being in the pickup community, I just wanted to shine a little bit of light on the pickup community, give my personal perspective, and come from a more understanding perspective than just to make fun of it in the first place or make fun of why the guys have gone there in the first place. And I'm going to get to that in a sec. But the second reason, and it kind of ties in with the first reason, is because I know that there are a lot of men that are struggling who have been in my place before, where they kind of feel like there's no hope. They don't have a lot of experience with women, and I was hoping to make this video, and maybe by talking about my personal experience and my story and where it led me, maybe that could help some other men who feel like they're struggling right now and are in a position where they're not sure where to turn to. Alright, with all that chatter, let's talk about how I got into the pickup community in the first place. We'll go way back. So as I said before, I grew up as a Hasidic Jew. I grew up in a small community where my father was the rabbi, so besides for that pressure, I grew up in an all-boys home. I have 5 other brothers right now. I know, poor mom. Besides for the fact that I didn't have a lot of contact with women in general, not having any sisters or sisters to bring home their friends made my limited experience with women even more limited. So growing up, I went to a mixed school, like a Hebrew academy, a modern Orthodox type of school with boys and girls, until I got into 7th grade, and then my parents decided, because I was getting a bit older and they felt like as a religious boy I shouldn't be hanging out with women, they sent me off to a boarding school in New York, and from 7th grade until I was 20 years old, I went to an all-boys school. Not only did I go to an all-boys school, but I also, during the summertime, went to only boys camps. To give you some perspective, very limited contact with women throughout the year, throughout my teenage years. Rarely did I ever talk to a girl. I don't even remember hanging out with a girl until I was about 18. A friend invited me to come hang out with him and a few friends, and I went over to their house, and there was a couple of girls there, and I just didn't know how to act. It was crazy. It was blowing my mind. And to give you an idea of what type of student I was the type of student who just wanted to party and have a good time. I wasn't, if you can believe it or not, I was not the best learning student. I know, I look like a nerd, so you'd think that I would have been stuffed in all my books, but no, that was not the case. All I wanted to do during my teenage and yeshiva years was just go out and party and have a good time. So I assumed when I finished school and I got into the real world that talking to women was one of those things that I just pick up easily. I was more of an extrovert. I just assumed that talking to girls wasn't that difficult. I learned very shortly that was not the case. So when I was about 20, I moved into an apartment with a few friends that I'd known from yeshiva. They had actually already been out of yeshiva for a few years. I was very new, and I was still religious at the time, mind you. So I was a religious guy. Barely had talked to women. Barely had any personal experiences or contact talking to women. On the other hand, my roommate was a lot more of a personable type of person. He had grown up with sisters. He had grown up having a lot more experience talking to women, and so when I moved in, he already had like a solid group of friends with like a few guys, a few girls. You cannot understand how insanely jealous I was. Growing up, I had always been jealous of shows like Friends, or watching any high school movies where guys and girls were able to hang out and party together. But besides for that, I also didn't know how to act around women. Again, I had no experience talking to them. So probably women can understand this better, but when women usually are hanging out with guys, there always seems to be one crazy dude. I mean, one guy that's just willing to do anything, who acts weird. He just is such an over-the-top type of person. That was me. But because I didn't have any experience with women, I didn't know how to talk to them. I felt like I wanted to get their attention somehow. So if we were all hanging out in my apartment, I couldn't strike up a conversation. So I'd like go to the fridge, grab some whipped cream, and like spray it in my mouth, and then go, "Hey, does anybody want it?" I'd be the weird dude. Now, believe it or not, that did not work. It did not get me any luck with women. They were not impressed with my whipped cream tactics. Slowly, I started to realize that my experience with women sucked. I sucked. I could barely look a woman in the eye. To be clear, I also had a lot of social anxiety. I mean, I was extroverted, but I also had a very low self-esteem of myself, and so that definitely didn't help. I moved in during the summertime. About 3 or 4 months in, I felt pretty lonely. I hadn't really made any friends. I didn't really know anybody, and it really sucked that I couldn't talk to women. So I remember a few months in living to New York, I decided whenever there was a party, whenever my roommate would bring over friends, or we'd have a party in my apartment, I was going to force myself to talk to women until I got to a place where I was comfortable talking to women. This was probably one of the most difficult things I've had to do in my entire life. It was really difficult. What it would look like with gatherings or parties at my place would be me sitting there in the corner with a drink, talking to myself, being like, whew, okay, all right, I'm gonna go over to that girl, say hello. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. And I'd just march over to that girl with my drink in my hand, just, oh, hey, what's up? How you doing? Hey, what's up? I'm Chaim. Like 50% of them just wouldn't even be interested. Then the other 50% would be like, oh, hi, how's it going? Be like, good. How you enjoyed the party? It's good. Yeah, it's okay. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. Yeah, sure, no problem. So that would be my night for months, where I'd just go up, talk to girls, totally get blown out, could barely hold a conversation. To be honest, it was very depressing. But the reason I came to that conclusion and why I felt like I needed to do that, because there was a point in my life where I realized I wasn't good at talking to women, and if I didn't put myself out there, then I wouldn't ever be able to get good with women. I wouldn't be able to even hold a good conversation. These are not things that one day, if you don't have them, you can wake up the next day and you do. So that's something I realized, and I realized that if I had lived my life, I would be very regretful if I didn't have that experience and I didn't know how to talk to women. So this is what I did for months. There were a couple of highlights though. There was this point, something I realized when I would go and try to approach women was that at the beginning it was really difficult, but as soon as I got rejected by 1 or 2 women, I started to feel a little more at ease. I remember one time at a party, I was able to feel a little more comfortable. Suddenly, I'd start to kind of get into a groove, and it would be easier to talk to women, and I'd have more of a fun time, and women would actually respond better. One time at a party, I sat down next to this girl, and we actually started talking, we got into a conversation, and I managed to actually get her number. It was the coolest thing in the world. And afterwards, I texted her. I was actually able to text her, but it didn't go anywhere, but the very fact that I was able to get a girl's number after, again, being rejected for months felt really good. I had, for months, been striking out at parties, social anxiety. You know what it feels like to just go to a party and talk to like 5 or 6 women, getting blown out and feel awkward by all of them? That was some of my experience trying to talk to women. Mind you, I didn't know about pickup to begin with. This was just something I decided in my life that I needed to do. So let me talk a little bit about how I was introduced to pickup in the first place. I remember one night, I was in the mood to hang out. I wanted to go party. None of my friends really were in the mood. I remember that there was this restaurant near my house. This restaurant was holding this dinner for Israeli army veterans, specifically veterans that had been wounded in combat. For whatever reason, I decided I'm gonna go and hang out there. I don't quite know. I used to be a little more impulsive like that, where I would just be like, I'm gonna go do something crazy. So I went there that night, and I hung out with some of the Israeli soldiers. Such cool people. I cannot tell you how fun and awesome. I even got up, I think, and said a speech, believe it or not. That's how crazy I was. And they actually invited me to come hang out with them later. They invited me to this club, and they wanted me to come hang out. So we went up to Manhattan to one of the clubs, and funny enough, they didn't tell me that they all had been invited specifically, and they made reservations to this club. And so they were all able to get it except for me. So I was left outside. But I decided I wasn't going to let this get me down. And I remember that there was a bar next door. And I decided I'm going to go hang out by the bar and see if I could talk to some women. And I remember I went into the bar and I actually bumped into some people that I recognized from where I live. I wasn't really good friends with any of them. And some of them actually had been really good friends with my roommate. And I decided to go over and say hello and hang out with them. And I remember I hung out with them and I had a really fun time. On my way back, I bumped into another group of people that I recognized from my community. One of them is actually one of my best friends till today. So I started to talk to them about how my night went, and they told me about how their night went. They told me that they were involved in pickup, and they explained to me that they were out there going to pick up women. And I was absolutely astonished. This was amazing to me. I didn't even realize that there were people on the internet that you could learn from. There was this community. There are other men who were interested in what I was doing, going out and trying to talk to women, to get better at talking to women. And that's where I slowly started to get into the pickup community and learn more about it. So here's the thing, even after all this, I still wasn't heavily into pickup, but I was still enthusiastic. There were small but monumental occasions during that year that happened to me. For example, I remember I had befriended a girl that I'd worked with, and one day she invited me to come hang out with her and a friend. And to me, that was just the craziest thing in the world, believe it or not, because I hadn't ever been asked to come hang out with a girl. That to me was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Really, top 5 best feelings I'd ever experienced. So there was little small things that had happened to me over that year that I'd very much appreciated because I had not experienced those things. So where I fully started to get into pickup, where I seriously started to get into pickup, was about a year after I moved to New York. That summer, I had actually managed to accumulate a small group of friends. I mean, there was another guy and 2 other girls. This was amazing for me. I mean, I was overjoyed. I had wanted a friend group for so long. And finally, after a year of putting in hard work and all this effort, I managed to actually accumulate a small group of friends, which I belonged to. And it was the most incredible thing. We would go out, we'd hang out. It was what I wished for when I first moved into my friend's place and saw that he had this solid group of friends. And now I had it. And again, these seem like very minute things, but for me, I never experienced them before. It was amazing for about 2 weeks. After about 2 or 3 weeks, all of them moved away. One of them left the country. Another of them moved back to her hometown of Florida. Enrolled in school and moved to Manhattan. So yeah, pretty much everybody had moved away. So not only that, but I had also started that September being evicted from my apartment. Yeah, we were being evicted. The neighbors didn't like us. Whatever. So we ended up having to move out of our apartment. I had moved in with somebody that I barely had known, and so I started that September out with no groups of friends, a new place with a person I barely knew. It was very depressing. I remember I was walking down the street, and I remember that friend that I met months ago pulled up on his motorcycle, and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, it's good, you know." And I remember we talked for a little bit, and he actually invited me to a Shabbat meal, believe it or not. And he said, yeah, it's gonna be really fun. There's gonna be guys there, girls there. And I was really hesitant. I was actually not thinking about going. I was just depressed. I didn't want to go out and hang out. But I don't remember what it was for me, but I decided I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go to the Shabbat meal and I'm gonna go hang out. So I remember that Friday night, I went over to my friend's place. I remember coming in, seeing a really long table with a bunch of guys, a bunch of girls there. I remember I sat down, and for at least the first 10 or 15 minutes, I felt incredibly awkward. Again, I really hadn't seen a lot of people. I wasn't feeling very extroverted. I felt very uncomfortable. But I remember there was one point at the meal where I decided, listen, I can either sit here and feel sorry for myself, or I can actually put myself out there and talk to somebody. And I remember I turned to the girl that was sitting next to me, and I started up a conversation. It was actually a really pleasant conversation, and it felt really good. After the meal, my friend and a couple of his friends, again, that I had met before, invited me to come hang out by a party. And I remember I hung out with them. I had such a great time. I really connected with these guys. And this was the first time, I think, in my life where I connected with friends that actually got me, that actually I just felt a part of. I felt like I was a part of this group. And that's where my whole thing with pickup really started, because these guys were heavily into pickup, and they were into going out like every weekend to parties and to bars, etc., and picking up women, and I really got invested in this. Like almost every weekend we'd go out to a club or to a bar, and we'd try to talk to women. I remember we'd start to go out to these clubs, and I think like a lot of people, at first I was very intimidated and overwhelmed with the whole aesthetic of the club. It was loud, noisy, tons of really good looking people. It felt very overwhelming. And I remember there was a point when I was in the club, my friend was just like, listen, you're putting too much pressure on yourself. Just enjoy the moment. Dance to the music. Get involved in what's happening now. And I remember being in that moment and just feeling really great. And kind of from then on, we'd go to the clubs, and I feel more and more comfortable being in the clubs, talking to people. I remember it was some of my favorite times. So I won't go too much into this, but this going on for about 2 years. We'd go out to clubs, parties, we'd host parties, we'd talk to women, get their numbers. I got just a ton of experience. And again, a lot of them were rejections. A lot of them were women not interested, but it didn't bother me as much because I'd gone out and I'd done it so many times that I'd gotten so much experience approaching women, talking to women, etc. It was just a full 2 years where I was finally able to get out this feeling of wanting to go out and party. I got out my partiness in those 2 years, which felt really good. You know, throughout yeshiva, again, I wanted to party, have a good time, and I was really repressed. I really couldn't do any of that stuff. So for about 2 years, it was almost like I was letting air out of a balloon, like slowly, just slowly letting all this air out of this balloon until, 2 years, I felt like I finally got it out of my system. After about 2 years, I started to suddenly not be as excited about going out and partying and talking to women and pickup. It wasn't as exciting anymore to watch videos on YouTube on how to talk to a woman and how to get laid, etc., and use those tips to go out, etc., and do all that stuff. At a certain point, it kind of wasn't as exciting anymore. And what I started to realize was I think I was looking for something a little more serious. So I'd been heavily in pickup for about 2 years. I think the next year I just wasn't heavily involved. I still had gone out to parties, etc., but I remember thinking to myself that partying and all that stuff wasn't particularly the focal point in my life. I think getting older, I just felt like I wanted to work on different stuff in my life. I'd been doing stand-up for a few years. I wanted to commit more to that. So I remember there was a point where I started to actually date this girl. And it was incredible because I never actually been in a serious relationship, and I felt like this could go this way. But I remember when I started dating her, there was a point where I felt this urge to go out and party, go back to my old days where I wanted to go do pickup. And I didn't understand why that was. And it was really frustrating. And I think it was part of ultimately why the relationship didn't work out. I didn't cheat or anything, but I just felt this urge to go out and party. So I started to really evaluate my life and think about how pickup had affected me. I think there were a few things that I came away with when it came to pickup on why I ultimately did not want to be so much in the pickup community anymore, why it wasn't as exciting for me to talk to girls and all that stuff. One of the first things that I realized from pickup, and I think why slowly I started to go away from the whole pickup community, was because I realized that the whole idea with pickup was just to get good with women. And I realized there wasn't really an end goal. It was just get better with women, continuously get better with women, And to me, that sounded like a very empty and kind of vapid goal, for me at least. You know, I understand if other people, that's what you want to do, fine, go ahead. But for me, it just felt like there was a lack of depth. I felt like there needed to be something at the end of all this, right? Because why I wanted to be in the pickup community in the first place was because I wanted to feel good about myself. I wanted to be able to talk to women. At the end of the day, have a meaningful relationship. And I think within the pickup community, the goal isn't necessarily to have a meaningful relationship. Maybe for some guys it is, but I think for a lot of these pickup artists, it's just get better. And there's a theme that it's just, you know, you want to get better, and the better you get at pickup. And at the time, for me, that was super exciting. But the older I get, it's less interesting. It's just not very exciting. Just get better with women. At a certain point, I think it's kind of an immature goal. For me, at least. Number two, what I also realized was, I think what pickup was missing was, it was only dealing with the external. I think for a lot of guys that get into pickup, they're really excited. It does help them to get out of themselves and to go out and talk to women and get more comfortable talking to women. And for me, it absolutely did that. And forever, I'll be grateful for how pickup motivated me to get out and go out of myself and to go out of my comfort zone. But one of the things that I think it's really lacking is the fact that it doesn't deal with the internal. A lot of what pickup is just tactics, is looking the part, acting a certain way, saying the right thing, and I think a lot of the times they don't actually address the internal things. I think for a lot of guys out there that are struggling to talk to women, I think they haven't addressed a lot of internal things within themselves that they need to fix. I think a lot of reasons why they feel like they're not confident enough, they feel like they're never gonna get a girlfriend, is specifically mainly from childhood trauma. It's really on how they look or view themselves, and I think that really comes from a more internal place. And I think if they were to actually, instead of externally get better with women, actually devote themselves to internally fixing a lot of the issues, they wouldn't feel the need to validate themselves to women. And that's the third thing I want to talk about, which is my life started to actually turn into, my motivation for why I was doing so many things was to impress women. Like every time I was at a party or whatever, or every time I was texting a girl, it was always, how do I get this girl? How do I get her to like me? And if I had said something wrong or I texted her the wrong thing, it was always, man, I made a mistake. Okay, I gotta switch this. So much of my motivation for why I did things involved getting women to like me. After a while, I realized that I actually wanted to do some things for myself. It didn't matter how women looked at me. What mattered was, am I improving on my life? Am I making my life better for me? Not for women, not to impress women, not because it makes me attractive to women, but because it just makes me into my best self. Another thing that I felt I was very much lacking was the idea of vulnerability. I grew up, I think like a lot of guys, thinking that women are not attracted to vulnerability. They don't like it. Showing any signs of vulnerability is bad. And the pickup community heavily stressed this, where it was any point that the girl sees that you're kind of vulnerable, or in some ways you're letting down your guard, or whatever it was, you're not being incredibly masculine, the girl's not going to be very attracted to you anymore. And from my personal experience, that's absolutely not the case, and it's actually incredibly unhealthy. And I think when I had this relationship with this girl, and part of why it didn't work out was because I never felt like I could let down my guard. I was continuously gaming the girl. I was continuously picking up the girl while I was in a relationship, as opposed to just being myself and being comfortable and being vulnerable. And women, on average, tend to be attracted to men who could be vulnerable, and I think be comfortable being vulnerable. I think that's actually a very masculine thing, because they're okay with expressing their emotions, and that they're not worried about what other people think about them. Just a few of those reasons, I realized that although there were some specific things I think that pickup had helped me to do, and I don't just want this to be a shit on pickup, because pickup actually helped me to go out of myself, actually go out of my comfort zone, have some fun, talk to women, get better and understand women a little bit more, and actually, believe it or not, treat women actually better. Believe it or not, I think a lot of people assume that guys in the pickup community don't treat women very well, but I think it's quite the opposite. Pickup actually teaches that women are just people, and you shouldn't treat them as if they're these incredible creatures, because I think a lot of the times, guys who haven't had a lot of experience with women, they treat women and put them on this pedestal. And one of the biggest issues I have with a lot of Hollywood movies is that they express this idea of the nice guy, this idea that if you just want it enough and you're just nice enough to a girl, she's gonna be attracted to you, she's gonna like you. And I think a lot of guys with very little experience, they treat women like this, and they expect that if they're nice to women, then they're owed something. You know, I think pickup kind of gets that out of you. Pickup kind of tells you, listen, girls don't owe you anything. You need to improve, you need to get better. So there definitely are aspects of pickup that I appreciated, it helped me out in life, but at the same time, I think you can achieve those things without having to be in pickup or get into pickup. I think going out and meeting women, you could just do by yourself. You could just do on your own or with a few friends. It doesn't have to be this thing where it's really technical and this is how you talk to the woman and etc. It could just be something you do personally on your own when you want to get better with women or have a good time. And so my end thoughts are to talk to men out there that are unfortunately dealing with how I was dealing back in the day. And there are a lot of guys out there who feel as if it's helpless. And I understand, I've been in your place. And I think it's unfortunate that that's never really addressed. And I think, unfortunately, because there really isn't a lot out there for guys, and guys, I think a lot of men who are in my position feel it's kind of hopeless, turn to pickup because it seems to be the only alternative. And I actually do think that there are people out there, even people on YouTube, that can help men out and help them get a better dating life. I think that's a better way of doing it. Get a better dating life as opposed to just picking up women. Getting a better dating life, I think, is a better way of approaching it because pickup is pretty much not even about the girl. It's about you, it's about your ego, it's about getting laid. It's about feeling great about yourself. A better dating life is improving your life and improving the quality of women that you are with, and I think in a much healthier and better way. And so I'll leave down below some specific people I think are great, some YouTubers. One of the YouTubers I actually did a video with that I think are actually way better and are a better alternative to the pickup community. Okay, those are my thoughts, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hope that if people are struggling out there, specifically men who are having a difficult time, I understand where you've been. I hope they can take something out of this. As I said before, I'll leave some of the instructors down below. People I think are really helpful and are way more healthier, will give you a healthier perspective. Yeah, so again, those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you liked this video, if you want to see more styles of videos like this, let me know down below in the comment section. Make sure if you like this video, hit that subscribe button, and let me know down below that you subscribed, and I will respond to your comment. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, guys.